Welcome to Hot Soup Stories. The sun had barely risen over the eastern countryside when May Lyon's mother tugged at her sleeve, urgency and exasperation dancing in her eyes. "Lyon, you must prepare yourself at once. Your cousin's wedding is today, and the carriage awaits." May Lyon drew a deep breath, staring out at the morning mist curling over the rice paddies. She had dreaded this day ever since the announcement arrived weeks ago. Weddings were not her world. The flowery silk robes, the endless bowing to distant relatives, the scheming suitors who whispered compliments she neither wanted nor needed. All of it was a cage disguised as celebration. "I would rather wander the bamboo groves alone," she murmured, brushing a hand over her plain silk robe. "Or perhaps sit by the pond and read poetry until the moon rises. Anything but a wedding." Her mother, an ever-persistent force of propriety, tugged her wrist with an iron grip. "Lyon, you speak as if filial duty is a burden. You are a guest at your cousin's wedding, not an outlaw fleeing the city gates." May Lyon sighed and allowed herself to be led to the carriage. The wheels creaked as it rattled along the dirt road, and she stared out the window, counting the clouds and imagining herself as a free bird, soaring far from obligations and the meddling eyes of relatives. The wedding hall was alive with color and sound. Red banners hung from every beam, embroidered with gold dragons and phoenixes. The scent of incense mingled with the sweetness of lotus cakes and candied fruit, creating a dizzying perfume that made her head spin. Laughter and conversation rose and fell like waves as guests exchanged flattery and subtle barbs. May Lyon moved cautiously through the crowd, bowing when necessary, smiling politely when prompted, and keeping her thoughts firmly to herself. She longed for a quiet corner, somewhere beyond the reach of gossiping aunts and scheming cousins. It was then she noticed him, Li Wei. He moved among the guests with effortless grace, a subtle authority that commanded attention without demanding it. His robe was simple yet refined, his black hair tied neatly with a silver clasp. He was arranging flowers, adjusting lanterns, and speaking softly to the staff with a tone that was both gentle and commanding. Even amid the chaos, he seemed unflappable. May Lyon could not look away. There was something magnetic about the way he worked, his focus absolute, his presence calm, yet undeniably commanding. A faint blush rose on her cheeks, though she chastised herself for noticing. After all, he was merely a wedding planner, a servant of tradition, not someone she would ever. Yet, in that fleeting moment, she felt a spark of curiosity, a whisper that perhaps this day would not be entirely unbearable. The wedding ceremony began with a procession of crimson-robed relatives, their faces painted with both excitement and self-importance. May Lyon observed politely, her hands folded in her lap, though her mind kept wandering to Li Wei. She noticed the way he guided a trembling flower girl, the way he calmed a nervous uncle, the small smile he offered to an overanxious bride. His attention to detail was meticulous, yet there was warmth in his gestures, an ease that contrasted sharply with the rigid expectations surrounding them. As the bride and groom exchanged vows beneath a carved wooden arch adorned with chrysanthemums, May Lyon felt a twinge of longing, not for marriage, certainly, but for freedom tempered with purpose, for someone who moved through the world with both grace and intention. And for reasons she could not yet name, she wondered what it would be like to know him. After the ceremony, the banquet commenced. Tables groaned under the weight of delicate dishes. Roast duck glazed with honey, steamed buns filled with sweet bean paste, lotus root simmered in fragrant broth. May Lyon sat beside her family, nodding politely as suitors approached with flattery that she carefully deflected. Li Wei moved through the hall, attending to every detail, yet he always seemed aware of her presence. At one point, a tray of wine tipped dangerously near her hand, and before she could react, he was there, steadying it with a quiet smile. "Lady May Lyon," he said softly, his voice carrying over the chatter. "The wine seems intent on spilling. Perhaps it prefers another guest." May Lyon blinked, startled by the attention. Her cheeks flushed, but she could not suppress a small laugh. "It seems so. Thank you for the rescue." His eyes crinkled faintly at the corners, and for a moment, she glimpsed a warmth behind the composed exterior. She realized then that, for all her resistance to weddings and ceremony, Li Wei's presence made the overwhelming world slightly more bearable. The afternoon passed in a blur of conversation, games, and formalities. Mei Lion found herself continually noticing Li Wei, the way he moved, the way he observed quietly without intrusion, the subtle way he protected her from unwanted attention. Each encounter, however brief, left a lingering warmth in her chest. By evening, the guests gathered in the gardens to release floating lanterns. Mei Lion held her lantern delicately, her hands trembling slightly, though she did not know why. The lantern reflected the golden glow of the setting sun, its flame flickering like a heartbeat. Li Wei approached quietly, his own lantern held with care. "Lady Mei Lion," he said softly, "perhaps this lantern can carry a wish you have not yet spoken aloud." She hesitated, then whispered, "I wish for a day that does not feel like a trap, a day where the world is simple and kind." Li Wei's dark eyes softened. "A worthy wish," he said, "and sometimes even the most complicated days reveal moments of simplicity if one is willing to notice them." Their hands brushed as they released the lanterns, drifting together across the water, casting a golden glow upon the rippling pond. For the first time that day, Mei Lion felt a quiet thrill, a sense that perhaps the world, despite its expectations and obligations, could hold moments of wonder and perhaps even connection. As the lanterns floated into the sky, Mei Lion realized that her thoughts were no longer solely on family duty or wedding etiquette. Her mind lingered on Li Wei, his quiet competence, his gentle attentiveness, and the way he made even the most overwhelming day seem manageable. She frowned softly, chastising herself, yet could not help the warmth that spread through her chest. Love was not something she had sought, nor something she wished to claim. Yet, in the quiet glow of lantern light, she sensed that her heart had begun to notice him, the man who moved through her world with calm authority and subtle charm. And as the night deepened, with plum blossoms whispering above and the soft flicker of lanterns reflected on the pond, Mei Lion allowed herself a single thought. Perhaps weddings were not so unbearable if one found the right person moving quietly alongside them. The day after the wedding, Mei Lion awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the carved wooden lattice of her room. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind. The music, the lanterns, and above all, Li Wei. She could not stop thinking about his quiet presence, the way he seemed to notice the smallest details, the way he moved among people with such ease. Fen, her loyal maid, knocked gently at the door. "Mistress, breakfast is served," she said, peeking inside. "And may I say, your demeanor yesterday drew attention, perhaps even admiration." Mei Lion rolled her eyes. "Admiration or scrutiny, Fen, what difference does it make? I would rather be unnoticed." Fen chuckled softly. "Perhaps, but someone, it seems, has already noticed you." She tapped the table lightly, hinting at subtle truths. Mei Lion frowned, brushing aside the thought, though a faint warmth rose in her chest. By mid-morning, Mei Lion found herself wandering through the estate's gardens, seeking the calm of shaded pathways and flowering plum trees. The air was fragrant with early blossoms, and the soft murmur of a distant stream added serenity to the scene. She was not alone for long. Li Wei appeared, walking with quiet purpose, carrying a small bundle of papers. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. "Lady Mei Lion," he said gently, inclining his head. "I hope I am not intruding. I merely wish to deliver these instructions for the household staff." Mei Lion blinked. "Instructions? Surely you do not need to personally deliver such matters." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes it is easier to ensure clarity in person, and it provides an opportunity to greet the lady of the house." Mei Lion felt her cheeks warm. She looked away, adjusting the folds of her robe. "You flatter too easily, Li Wei." He laughed softly, the sound low and steady. "Perhaps, or perhaps I merely speak the truth." Over the next few days, Mei Lion noticed Li Wei's presence more keenly. He was always there, not looming or intrusive, but attentive, observing quietly, guiding, and assisting where needed. When a mischievous cousin attempted to embarrass her during a tea ceremony, it was Li Wei who subtly deflected the conversation, placing Mei Lion in a light that highlighted her intelligence and wit. One afternoon, Mei Lion found herself alone in the Eastern Pavilion, practicing calligraphy for leisure. Li Wei appeared without announcement, carrying a small inkstone and a bundle of parchment. "You enjoy your studies," he observed softly, placing the items on the table. "May I offer guidance?" She raised an eyebrow. "Guidance? You are a wedding planner, not a calligraphy master." His lips curved into a faint smile. "Wisdom comes from many sources, Lady Mei Lion. One need not hold a title to offer counsel." Reluctantly, she allowed him to sit beside her. Their hands occasionally brushed as he showed her subtle techniques, and each touch sent a quiet thrill through her. Words passed between them with ease, light, and teasing at first, gradually deepening into more thoughtful exchanges. The household grew tense when a delegation arrived from a neighboring estate. Among them was Zhao Liang, a young man with a polished smile and a family of influence. He made no secret of his admiration for Mei Lion, approaching her repeatedly with compliments and offers of attention. Li Wei, ever vigilant, remained close by. He observed Zhao Liang with a careful gaze, noting his intentions and subtle gestures. When Zhao Liang attempted to monopolize her during a discussion on poetry, Li Wei stepped in with gentle authority, redirecting the conversation with elegance and precision. Mei Lion felt a mix of relief and gratitude. "You make it seem effortless," she said later, when they walked in the gardens together. Li Wei shook his head. "It is never effortless, but some things, some people are worth the effort." Her heart skipped a beat. She wanted to ask him to explain, to elaborate, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she walked beside him in silence, watching the petals drift along the stone paths. One evening, while the estate prepared for a mid-autumn celebration, Mei Lion overheard servants whispering about Li Wei's past. "They say Master Li Wei comes from a family once embroiled in southern disputes," one murmured. "It is said he left to protect the family name." The words sent a shiver down her spine. For all his calm composure, Li Wei carried burdens unknown to her. She felt a mixture of fear and fascination, someone so capable yet so private, bearing unseen weight. When Li Wei approached later that evening, she could not help but ask softly, "Is it true? Your family disputes?" He studied her with care, then nodded. "Yes, there were conflicts I could not resolve as a child, responsibilities I have carried ever since. It is a part of who I am, though I have kept it separate from this place until now." Mei Lion felt a surge of empathy and admiration. "And yet, you still move with such grace. You shield others, even when the danger is yours alone." He looked at her intently. "I protect what is precious, and I hope that includes you." The mid-autumn evening arrived, and the estate was bathed in lantern light. Guests mingled, children played with shadow puppets, and the aroma of mooncakes filled the air. Mei Lion held her lantern, standing near the koi pond, feeling both anxious and exhilarated. Li Wei approached, carrying his own lantern. "Lady Mei Lion," he said softly, "the night is beautiful. Perhaps your wish can travel with this lantern." Mei Lion hesitated, then whispered, "I wish for clarity, for understanding of my heart and the courage to face what is to come." He offered a faint smile, his gaze steady and unwavering. "A worthy wish, and sometimes clarity is not found in avoidance, but in the presence of those who illuminate our path." Their hands brushed as they released the lanterns. The lanterns drifted into the night sky, their golden glow reflecting on the pond. Mei Lion felt a thrill of connection, a subtle promise that perhaps, despite expectations, her heart could find freedom within the boundaries of duty. As the celebration continued, Mei Lion realized that her thoughts lingered less on the obligations of her family or the attention of suitors, and more on the quiet, steadfast man who had captured her curiosity and perhaps even her heart. She had begun to notice the small gestures, the subtle attentions, and the strength that lay beneath Li Wei's calm exterior. And though she would not yet admit it, a seed of something new had taken root within her. Hope. Hope that even amidst ceremony, obligation, and expectation, she might find connection, understanding, and perhaps love. The night ended with lanterns floating across the pond, drifting into the sky, and Mei Lion knew that her world, once dull and constrained by tradition, was quietly shifting. And at the center of that shift was Li Wei, the man who moved with grace, authority, and a quiet charm she could not ignore. Days passed in a rhythm of ceremony, duty, and subtle intrigue. Mei Lion found herself more aware of Li Wei than ever before. His presence was a constant in the flurry of the estate's activity, quiet, unassuming, yet undeniably grounding. She watched him guide servants, calm irate relatives, and ensure the smooth progress of events, all while maintaining a calm demeanor that both inspired and unsettled her. One afternoon, she wandered into the eastern gardens, seeking a brief respite from the chatter of relatives and the prying eyes of suitors. The garden was bathed in the soft light of late afternoon, shadows stretching across the cobblestones and the petals of early blossoms. Li Wei was there, arranging decorative lanterns in preparation for an evening celebration. His brow was furrowed in concentration, and for a moment he seemed unaware of her presence. Mei Lion paused, mesmerized by the careful precision of his movements. "You are meticulous, Li Wei," she remarked softly, stepping onto the path. He looked up, startled, then allowed a small smile. "Attention to detail is necessary, Lady Mei Lion. One misstep, and a celebration can descend into chaos." She tilted her head, a faint smile on her lips. "Perhaps chaos is not so terrible if one knows how to manage it." He laughed quietly, a low sound that resonated in the still garden. "Then perhaps you are more cunning than I first imagined, a rare quality indeed." The conversation was light, yet beneath it lay an unspoken understanding. Mei Lion felt a flutter in her chest, a combination of admiration, curiosity, and something she dared not name. That evening, the estate hosted a small gathering for distant relatives and influential neighbors. Zhao Liang, the young suitor who had been attentive to her in previous days, sought to monopolize her attention. His polished words and strategic flattery were meant to impress, but Mei Lion, having observed Li Wei's subtle interventions, deftly deflected his attempts. Li Wei noticed, moving beside her with quiet vigilance. At one point, Zhao Liang attempted to present a poem to her, hopping to showcase his refinement. Mei Lion, however, responded with a gentle correction of his phrasing, impressing the gathered audience with her knowledge of poetry. Li Wei's eyes briefly met hers, and she caught a flicker of pride, though he concealed it behind his calm expression. "You are clever," he whispered when they stepped aside, "and cautious, a rare combination." She laughed softly, though a faint blush colored her cheeks. "I learned from the best," she replied teasingly. As the days progressed, Mei Lion began to observe Li Wei more closely, noting the small acts of kindness and consideration he showed to everyone, from children to servants. He carried himself with dignity, yet there was a warmth in his eyes, a subtle attentiveness that made her heart ache with longing. Late one afternoon, while walking through a secluded bamboo grove, she found herself speaking more freely than she had intended. "Li Wei, do you ever tire of this life, of the constant expectations and vigilance?" He paused, his hand brushing lightly against the bamboo stalks. "Sometimes, but a life without responsibility is not a life I can bear. We are measured not by ease, but by the strength with which we carry our burdens." Mei Lion considered his words. "And your burdens, they must be heavy indeed." He regarded her silently for a long moment. "They are, but they are lighter when shared with those one trusts." Her heart skipped a beat. The words were simple, yet the weight behind them was undeniable. Trust was rare in a world of obligation and duty, yet Li Wei seemed to offer it freely, cautiously, and with purpose. One evening, the estate prepared for a lantern festival, an event that drew families from nearby villages to celebrate the full moon. The gardens were illuminated with hundreds of glowing lanterns, their reflections shimmering across the koi ponds and cobblestone paths. Mei Lion held a lantern in her hands, the soft light casting a warm glow on her face. She wandered to the edge of the pond, lost in thought, when she felt a shadow beside her. "Lady Mei Lion," Li Wei said, his voice soft and steady. "The night is beautiful, is it not?" She nodded, hesitating. "Yes, beautiful and fleeting, much like some moments in life." He stepped closer, and for a moment they stood in quiet companionship, the world around them fading into the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft glow of lantern light. "You have grown more confident," he said after a pause. "In your words, your demeanor, even in your subtle wit, I admire it." Mei Lion felt a warmth she could not suppress. "I learned from you," she said softly. "Watching how you move through this world, calm and deliberate, has inspired me." Their eyes met, and in that gaze, unspoken emotions surged. Respect, admiration, and a burgeoning affection that neither could yet name aloud. The next day, whispers of Li Wei's past began to circulate among the servants. Mei Lion overheard fragments, tales of southern factions, of family disputes, of honor and duty that stretched beyond the walls of the estate. Curiosity and concern mingled within her. When Li Wei noticed her pensive expression later that evening, he approached quietly. "You have heard rumors," he stated softly. She nodded. "I did, is it true?" He sighed, his dark eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Yes, there were conflicts I could not prevent as a child, matters that shaped my family and forced me to leave my home to protect them. It is a past I have kept separate, yet it always shadows the present." Her hand brushed against his as she spoke. "And yet you remain steadfast, careful, and kind, even to me." He regarded her, his gaze lingering. "You are important to me, Mei Lion. That is why I move cautiously, why I protect, why I am here." The words struck her with quiet force. She felt her chest tighten, the flutter of emotions she had tried to ignore finally making themselves known. The festival arrived with the full moon rising high, lanterns floating into the sky as wishes were whispered into the night. Mei Lion released her lantern, her heart filled with hope and apprehension. Li Wei released his beside her, and for a moment their hands touched, fingers brushing lightly. "You are braver than you think," he said softly, watching the lanterns drift. "And you are more complicated than I imagined," she replied, her voice barely audible. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why we notice each other at all." As the lanterns rose into the night sky, Mei Lion felt a quiet thrill, a sense that the tides of her heart were shifting, and that Li Wei, with his calm authority and subtle charm, had become more than a companion. He had become a presence that illuminated even the most overwhelming days. And though she could not yet name it aloud, she realized that her feelings had begun to grow, quietly, steadily, and irrevocably. The days that followed the Lantern Festival were quiet at first, but Mei Lion could sense a subtle shift in the air. Whispers moved like shadows through the estate. Servants spoke in hushed tones of distant envoys, subtle threats, and rival factions beyond the mountains. Even Li Wei, usually so composed, carried a tension she had never noticed before. She found him one morning in the eastern gardens, inspecting lanterns left over from the festival. His hands moved deftly, adjusting threads and securing supports, but his dark eyes were clouded with worry. "Li Wei," she began cautiously, "you seem troubled. Is something amiss?" He straightened, glancing at her with a measured gaze. "There are matters I cannot yet fully explain, Mei Lion. My past, it seems to have found its way here. Certain factions I thought long distant are taking notice of events in this region." Her heart skipped. Factions, dangerous ones. He nodded gravely. "Yes, they would exploit weakness to their advantage, and I must ensure no harm comes to those I am sworn to protect. That includes you." Mei Lion's chest tightened. She had suspected his vigilance was more than mere attention to detail, but hearing it confirmed set her nerves alight. "Then let me help. I am not so fragile as to be hidden away." Li Wei studied her, weighing her words. Finally, he said, "Caution will be your greatest ally, but your courage, it may indeed prove valuable." The first challenge came sooner than either of them expected. During a morning tea with visiting relatives, a young nobleman arrived with a discreet but pointed message, an offer of alliance, veiled in compliments and thinly disguised threats. He was polite, courteous, but his eyes were sharp, and Mei Lion immediately sensed the hidden meaning. Li Wei noticed as well. He leaned close, lowering his voice so only she could hear. He seeks to manipulate the family into his favor. Observe, but respond only as necessary. Mei Lion nodded, studying the nobleman carefully. When he attempted to corner her with flattery, she countered with a subtle jest that exposed his superficial knowledge of poetry, earning polite laughter from the other guests. Li Wei's eyes briefly met hers, and a flicker of pride passed between them. That evening, while the estate prepared for a smaller moon-viewing celebration, Mei Lion discovered evidence of more subtle intrigue. Servants whispered of a mysterious visitor seen near the gates at night, someone whose identity remained unknown. Li Wei, sensing her concern, took her aside. "This is why I remain vigilant," he explained. "Danger does not always announce itself. Often it moves quietly, observing, waiting, and when it strikes, it will aim for the unprepared." Mei Lion felt a surge of fear and resolve. "Then teach me," she said, gripping his arm lightly. "I want to be ready, not merely protected." He looked at her, a mixture of admiration and caution in his gaze. "Very well. You must learn to read intention, to notice subtle cues, and to act decisively. It will not be easy." Over the next days, Mei Lion trained quietly under his guidance. They practiced observing behavior, anticipating moves in conversation, and interpreting subtle gestures. Mei Lion surprised even herself with her quick understanding and natural intuition. One afternoon, while walking through the bamboo grove, Li Wei paused. "You are quick, Mei Lion, faster than I anticipated." She laughed softly. "Do not flatter me too much, or I may believe I am capable of more than I am." He shook his head, a faint smile curving his lips. "You are capable of far more than you imagine, and you have courage, quiet, steadfast courage that I admire." Her cheeks flushed. "You make it sound so simple." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Simple is rarely accurate, but truth is often quieter than one expects." Trouble came with the arrival of a delegation from the southern factions. A man of polished words and sharp eyes sought to meet with the estate's elders, ostensibly to discuss trade, but Li Wei recognized the underlying intent: manipulation, observation, and perhaps intimidation. Mei Lion watched from the side, heart pounding, as Li Wei moved with quiet authority, guiding conversations, deflecting pointed questions, and subtly undermining the man's attempts to unsettle the family. When a veiled threat slipped into the discussion, Li Wei's expression hardened, his voice calm but firm. "We are grateful for your visit, but the affairs of our family are not for others to dictate. I trust you understand the boundaries of propriety." The delegation left shortly after, their plans foiled, though Mei Lion noticed the faint, dark glimmer of resentment in the departing eyes. She turned to Li Wei. "You handled that so effortlessly." He shook his head. "Effortless is not the word I would use. Every gesture, every word must be calculated. One misstep, and the consequences can be severe." Her admiration deepened. Here was a man of quiet strength and sharp intelligence, guarding not just the family's honor, but the safety of everyone under his care, and, she realized with a start, her own. The evenings became their shared refuge. In quiet corners of the garden, they practiced calligraphy, exchanged thoughts on poetry, and discussed matters of philosophy and history. Each conversation deepened their understanding of one another. One night, beneath a sky heavy with stars, Mei Lion spoke softly. "Li Wei, I feel a bond forming between us. I do not fully understand it, yet it grows stronger each day." He regarded her, the moonlight glinting off his dark eyes. "A bond," he said, "is not merely about proximity. It is trust, understanding, and the willingness to face both joy and danger together. If we are to endure what is coming, this bond will be essential." Her hand brushed his, intentionally this time, and he did not withdraw. "Then I will face it with you," she whispered. Li Wei's gaze softened, a rare warmth breaking through the usual composure. "And I with you," he replied. As the night deepened, a quiet tension hung in the air. Mei Lion sensed that their growing affection was about to be tested, not by ceremony or duty, but by real danger, a danger rooted in Li Wei's past and the ambitions of those who sought to disrupt their lives. Yet for the first time, she felt a thrill of courage. For the first time, she knew that her feelings, though tender and uncertain, were part of something larger, a partnership, a trust, and a love that demanded bravery, honesty, and unwavering commitment. And in that moment, beneath the shadows of the bamboo grove and the soft glow of the moon, Mei Lion understood that life would never be simple again, and neither would love. The morning dawned crisp and clear over the estate, yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Rumors of southern factions plotting to destabilize the region had reached the family elders. Their influence had been subtle, but their intent was unmistakable: coercion and manipulation, cloaked in civility. Li Wei moved through the estate like a shadow, checking defenses, reviewing every detail of household security, and ensuring that every guest and relative understood their roles. Mei Lion watched him with awe and determination. She had learned much in recent days: observation, subtle negotiation, and the courage to act when necessary. "Li Wei," she said quietly, stepping beside him in the eastern gardens, "if there is danger today, I will not hide. I will help." His dark eyes softened, and he reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Your courage is admirable, Mei Lion, but remember, a single misstep could jeopardize everything. You must act wisely, not recklessly." "I will act wisely," she promised, her voice firm, "but I will not stand aside." By mid-morning, the tension escalated. A carriage approached the estate gates, escorted by men of unfamiliar origin. The southern delegation had arrived under the guise of formal trade, but their demeanor, sharp eyes, and hidden signals spoke of ulterior motives. Li Wei took command, his calm authority asserting itself immediately. "Escort them to the reception hall," he instructed, "and observe every word, every gesture. Nothing passes unnoticed." Mei Lion remained close, watching carefully. She noted the subtle shifts in posture, the glances exchanged between the delegation members, and whispered observations about intentions that only someone trained to notice would catch. "You have learned quickly," Li Wei murmured, his voice low. She allowed a small smile. "I am learning from the best." Inside the reception hall, the delegation attempted to impose subtle pressure on the family elders, hinting at alliances and favors in exchange for compliance. Mei Lion observed quietly, noting the flustered reactions of some relatives and the careful words of others. When one of the men attempted a veiled threat, she spoke up, her voice calm and steady. "Respectfully, a family's honor cannot be purchased, nor can its loyalty be swayed by subtle intimidation. We welcome discourse, but threats are neither needed nor appreciated." Li Wei's gaze met hers, a flicker of pride in his dark eyes. Her words had not only been wise, but had diffused part of the tension, drawing attention away from potential missteps. As the confrontation continued, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A smaller faction, allied with the southern delegation, had attempted to breach the estate gates, seeking leverage. Li Wei's expression hardened. "Prepare the guards. Ensure the family remains protected. Mei Lion, stay close. Observe and report anything unusual." Together, they moved through the estate like twin shadows, he with practiced authority, she with keen observation. When a servant hesitated at a side gate, she noticed the subtle sign of tampering and alerted Li Wei immediately. His swift intervention prevented what could have been a disaster. "You are quick," he whispered as they secured the gates. "Faster than I could have hoped." "And you," she replied, "are steadier than anyone I have ever known." By evening, the danger had passed, though the tension lingered like a low hum. The southern delegation departed, thwarted in their plans and impressed, albeit reluctantly, by the family's unity and cleverness. Li Wei led Mei Lion to the eastern gardens, the soft glow of lanterns illuminating their path. "You were remarkable today," he said, his voice carrying a quiet admiration. "Your courage, your intelligence, I am honored to have stood beside you." Mei Lion's heart pounded. I could not have done it without you. He reached for her hand, his touch steady and reassuring. Perhaps we are stronger together than apart. Their eyes met, and the unspoken truth between them became undeniable. Every glance, every subtle gesture of attention over the past days had led to this moment. The world of duty, expectation, and ceremony faded, leaving only the bond they had forged through trust, courage, and mutual understanding. Days later, the estate celebrated a smaller, intimate ceremony to honor the safety and unity of the family. Lanterns floated across the gardens, carrying wishes for the future. Mei Lion stood beside Li Wei, her heart full, her gaze meeting his with quiet certainty. Today, he whispered, we celebrate more than family tradition. We celebrate courage, trust, and perhaps the beginning of something new. She smiled softly. Yes, something new. The elders offered blessings, not just for family prosperity, but for the two of them. Mei Lion felt a warmth she had never known, a sense of belonging and love intertwined with duty. For the first time, she did not see weddings as traps or obligations. Instead, she saw the potential for joy, partnership, and shared purpose. Under the full moon, as lanterns drifted across the koi ponds, Li Wei took Mei Lion's hands in his. Mei Lion, he said, voice steady yet filled with emotion, I have guarded, guided, and protected for many years. But with you, I wish to do more than protect. I wish to stand beside you in all things and to share life's joys and burdens alike. Tears shimmered in her eyes as she replied, and I, Li Wei, wish the same. I wish to stand beside you, not as someone sheltered, but as your partner in courage, in thought, in heart. He bowed his head slightly, then pressed a gentle kiss to her hand. A promise, a bond, and an acknowledgement of love that had grown quietly but steadily through trials, observation, and shared courage. The night unfolded with quiet celebration. Guests smiled, lanterns glowed, and the estate seemed more alive than ever. Mei Lion and Li Wei walked together through the gardens, their hands entwined, hearts aligned. For Mei Lion, the journey had been one from obligation to awareness, from reluctance to courage, and from curiosity to love. She had discovered not just the charm of Li Wei, but the strength within herself, the ability to observe, act, and embrace life with courage. Li Wei, steadfast and calm, had found in Mei Lion not only a companion but a partner who could meet him in strength, intelligence, and heart. Together, they had navigated danger, intrigue, and expectation, and emerged not only victorious but in love. As the final lanterns drifted into the night sky, Mei Lion allowed herself a quiet thought. Perhaps weddings were not merely ceremonies of obligation, nor the theater of tedious tradition. Perhaps they were the beginning of a life shared, of courage, trust, and the quiet, steady flame of love that could endure anything. And in Li Wei's steady gaze, she saw a reflection of her own heart, unyielding, steadfast, and entirely devoted. Thanks for tuning in to Hot Soup Stories. If you love audio stories, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your encouragement keeps our stories coming.